Hello and welcome to Pemberley and Beyond. I'm Kat, your guide through the ever-expanding world of Jane Austen-inspired fanfiction. Expect new lives, new loves, fresh drama, and the tropes that just keep turning up, rather like Wickham at the door of a wealthy young heiress. In this episode, we embrace the magic within the Jaffaverse. Literally, cauldrons bubble, whispers of spells drift through the air, and intrigue stirs even the stiffest cravat. Published in July 2025, this book is a prequel to the hotly anticipated Pride and Prejudice and Potions, cozy mystery series that, to my lasting regret, I missed out on funding on Kickstarter. Doh! The first instalment in this 12-novella series is due to be published in mid-September, but the prequel is free on Amazon, so naturally, I consoled myself with that instead of the digital downloads I could have had if I'd backed the project. Yes, I am still sulking about it. So what story could possibly have got me so unhappy about having missed out on funding the Kickstarter? Well, allow me to introduce the blurb to the very first of the Pride and Prejudice and Potions series. Cue the blurb music, because every magical tale deserves some ambience. The guests won't say a word. The plants won't stop talking. Literally won't stop talking. I can barely keep mine alive for a week, let alone get them to sustain a conversation with me. Hosting her family's annual All Hallows Eve masquerade ball is Georgiana's responsibility, but attending is her chance to unmask her secret admirer. But when a guest is murdered, the evening turns from a magical night into a high society whodunit. To make matters worse, the prime suspect is none other than George Wickham, the man she's loved for years. He's charming, infuriating, and swears he's innocent. Can Georgiana solve the mystery, clear Wickham's name, and finally get him to see her as more than his best friend's little sister? Or will she discover that love and murder are rarely what they seem? So let's talk tropes, because this novella was wall-to-wall trope-tastic goodness. Each page was brimming with conventions that we all know and that I love, and yet they were handled with a deftness that kept them feeling fresh rather than, oh, it's a tick box, it's a checklist. It is an obligatory trope for this genre. From the seasonal coziness to the flutter of a mask across a ballroom and the hints of a magical hierarchy that promises far more to come, the story was a veritable parade of familiar delights. In other words, this is not a story that ticked boxes for the sake of it. Each trope, whether it's autumnal ambience, magical social structures, or a masquerade ball filled with intrigue, serves both the plot and the atmosphere. It's a novella that knows exactly what it wants to be, a compact, visually rich, and enchantingly immersive experience that whets the appetite for the series ahead. So, with all that in mind, let us dive into our first trope, which I'm calling "'Tis the Season to be Cozy." Within the very first chapter, I knew that the cozy vibes of this novella were going to be immaculate. Not unlike a Tennessee Williams play, every sense was catered to. Sense of spice in the air, the crackle of firelight, the rustle of autumnal drapery, even the taste of seasonal delicacies that seem to waft off the page. As the blurb tells us, this novella is set during All Hallows Eve, and the atmosphere is distinctly autumnal. Cauldrons of mulled spices bubble at Pemberley, curtains fall in russet and gold, gourds adorn the hearth, and every good seasonal indulgence you can imagine is given its due, including the perennial pumpkin spice lattes. It almost made me want to drive the nearly 3 hours it takes to get to my nearest Starbucks here in New Zealand and demand that they conjure one on the spot. A flat white simply does not suffice, dear barista. What's fascinating is that this coziness is not merely a garnish to the story, but very much the series' raison d'être. The Kickstarter campaign makes that explicit. It says, Book 1 takes place in September, making it perfect for soaking up all the witchy vibes. After that, you'll receive a new novella every 1 to 2 weeks, carrying you through cozy fall nights, festive Christmas magic, and swoony Valentine's fun. Each book matches the vibe of its release season, so you'll always have the perfect cozy read to curl up with. In other words, the cycle of the seasons is built into the publishing model itself. Coziness is not just an atmosphere here, it is the architecture, the very rhythm of the series. That explains, I think, why this prequel leans so deeply into All Hallows' Eve. It's not a random flourish, as I said before, it's the opening note of a symphony of seasonal moods. If this novella delivers entire leaf mounds of autumn vibes, then its successors promise several months' worth of enchantment, from festive Yuletide comforts to Valentine's romance. Cozy reading as a kind of calendar ritual. Austen, but with potions and pumpkins and presents. I cannot tell you how psyched I am for the rest of this series. But I can't just fangirl. We are here for the tropes after all. Trope 2. Magical world vibes. And of course, I do mean literally magical. It's been some time since I finished The Witches of Thistlegrove by Lana Harper, so I've been craving those enchanted small town vibes. This novella doesn't quite open up the whole magical world just yet. That seems to be reserved for the later books in the series, but it firmly plants its flag in the realm of spells, potions, and whispered enchantments. What it does give us is a tantalizing taste of the social order within this magical universe. We learn that the Fae form the upper echelons of society, their wealth and influence establishing them as the equivalent of landed nobility. By contrast, vampires and werewolves are relegated to the fringes, shunned and treated as undesirables. The novella is very clear on this hierarchy, and it's a clever mirror of Austen's own class-conscious world, where bloodlines and connections dictated one's place in society just as much as wealth did. The revelation that Wickham himself is a vampire is particularly striking. In Austen's original, he is the mere son of old Mr. Darcy's steward, socially inferior even before his vices are revealed. Here, his vampirism marks him with the same stain of low status. It's a neat piece of reimagining, I thought. Wickham's questionable reputation in the Regency world is transposed seamlessly into the prejudices of a magical one. At the same time, it gives us valuable insight into Georgiana's character. She has been quietly lobbying her uncle to change the laws governing the treatment of vampires and werewolves, an early indication of both her compassion and her willingness to challenge entrenched hierarchies. This revelation also lays the groundwork for 2 important arcs. First, it explains why Wickham and Georgiana, in spite of their evident feelings, cannot be together. The barriers are not merely familial, but societal, reinforced by prejudice which has been codified into law. Second, it prepares us for a later romantic arc in which Wickham becomes entangled with Lydia. By introducing his outsider status here, the series prevents that future pairing from feeling like a reckless lapse on Lydia's part, or an implausible redemption for Wickham. Instead, I'm hoping that this is careful foreshadowing, and that this series will promise to be as much about dismantling prejudice as it is, or hopefully will be, about personal transformation. Which leads us onto our third and final trope of the episode. Masquerade madness. So why aren't we seeing more of Austen Heights, the magical town in which the Pride and Prejudice and Potions series is set in all its glory? Ah yes, because we are at a masquerade ball, a classic setting for secrets, revelations, and, as any Poirot fan could tell you, murder. In Prequel story, Pride and Prejudice and Potions, the ball provides both glamour and menace. Against the backdrop of flickering candlelight and velvet drapery, the novella hints at a wider world where vampires and werewolves are regarded as socially undesirable, particularly among the upper echelons of Fae society. It's the perfect stage for a story of hidden truths. The masks glitter enticingly, but they also conceal motives, identities, and the occasional bloodstain. What struck me most is that this was no mere lip service to the masquerade trope. It embraced the delightful convention wholeheartedly. As the Trope Encyclopedia will tell you, masquerades have historically offered 2 irresistible temptations: First, the opportunity to indulge in scandalous behaviour under the cover of anonymity, and second, the irresistible chance for the uninvited to slip past the guards and join the revels. Believe me when I say both traditions are alive and well at Pemberley during this novella. It gives us Wickham in disguise, his identity fully concealed as he dances, flirts, and eventually kisses Georgiana. Both the first and the last kiss they will ever share. He knows it must be fleeting, as his vampirism prevents him from honourably pursuing her, however much he feels for her. Georgiana, meanwhile, thrills at the moment, even as she recognises that her brother would be horrified at her boldness. Moss protects her, at least temporarily, from censure. And as for Wickham's very presence at the ball, well, he is not meant to be there at all. The novella reveals him to be one of several gatecrashers, slipping in as easily as he once slipped into the good graces of every wealthy family in Hertfordshire. And that brings us to the end of this month's trope review. As this novella was so short and sweet, I felt that a similarly short and sweet, but not Sabrina Carpenter coded, rundown of the three main tropes would be most fun for us all. Allow us to slip into section 2, the companion read. And so we see that the masquerade here is no decorative backdrop, but a fully realised convention, with all the delightful hazards it traditionally brings. Scandalous behaviour behind a mask, and the occasional gatecrasher slipping past the door. Small wonder then that the setting has proved irresistible, not only to Austen-inspired fanfiction, but also to the golden age of detective fiction. Which brings us neatly to this month's companion read, or, as I like to call them, my hocus tropus pairings. If Pride and Prejudice and Potions gives us masquerade with a dash of enchantment, then this episode's recommendation, Agatha Christie's The Affair at the Victory Ball, gives us masquerade distilled to its purest form. A short, sharp tale of secrets and unmaskings, and the very first short story featuring Monsieur Hercule Poirot. Both Pride and Prejudice and Potions and Agatha Christie's The Affair at the Victory Ball place their mysteries within the glittering confines of a masquerade. The setting is far from accidental. As I mentioned before, masks conceal identities, but they also heighten drama, lending every whispered aside and stolen glance an extra charge of secrecy. In both stories, the attendees are drawn from the elite, from Fay high society in Drake's novella, and from Christie's fashionable London set in Poirot's short story debut. This shared backdrop of wealth and refinement gives the mysteries a sharp edge. Behind the velvet and champagne, danger waits patiently to be unmasked. What makes this hocus tropus pairing especially fun is both novellas' brevity, along with their visual flair. At only a few pages long, Christie's story set the stage for decades of ingenious Poirot plots. Drake's prequel is also concise at 103 pages, yet it conjures an entire world of Austen meets enchantment. Both novellas benefit from being highly visual. Christie's Masquerade came to life in an excellent television adaptation featuring David Suchet, with its riot of costumes and ominous undertones, while Drake's descriptions revel in autumnal colours, flickering candlelight, and the theatricality of a magical ball. Read together, they show just how much mystery and mischief can be packed into a single evening behind a mask. So whether it's Poirot in London or Georgiana in Derbyshire, the masquerade proves an irresistible stage for secrets, spectacle, and sudden revelations. And that brings us neatly back to Pemberley, or rather, to me, in Cat's Corner, where I set aside the masks for a moment, pour another cup of tea, today it's rooibos with apple and mint, and reflect on what all of this means beyond the page. I feel there's something about a masquerade that makes it the perfect metaphor for stories like these. On the surface we have glamour, wit, and elegance, but underneath there are always secrets waiting to be uncovered. Austen herself was fascinated by appearances versus the true character of someone. Darcy's pride, Elizabeth's prejudice, Wickham's charm. And it all feels wonderfully fitting that her characters can slip so easily into the masked world of mystery fiction. Perhaps that's why the trope endures. The mask is never just a costume, but a reminder that in society, as in stories, what we show to the world is rarely the whole truth. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you've made it this far, consider following this podcast so you can join me on future rambles through the wilds of Jaff. Until next time, may your tea stay hot, your tropes well executed, and your Mr. Darcy tolerable, I suppose.